Tanya, the Albanese government has been accused of political point scoring as they try to tackle this cost of living crisis. They're using methods that either, are deceptive, like reneging on the tax cuts, or they just sort of haven't really worked. Do you think anything the federal government have done has any teeth with helping ordinary Australians through this?
I don't think the federal government is at all interested in helping ordinary Australians, and you can see that in the way they managed or mismanaged the stage 3 tax cuts in the course of 7 days, completely changing their tune on those cuts. And in the manner that Albanese himself explained it, suggesting that there was an ERC and Treasury advice that had changed overnight. When we all know the reality is this is all about the by-election, it's all about politics, and it's all about polling. Albanese is looking at who are the demographic that are voting for him. He's completely focused on this by-election. He's entirely focused on politics. It's not about helping ordinary Australians. It's about his own polling. And for him, he's made a strategic political decision to not proceed with those tax cuts. He'd rather be branded a liar than a loser, ultimately, because this is a political decision. It is about political point scoring. And he will be expected and most likely win this by-election because of the decisions that he's making. Ultimately, is there relief for ordinary Australians? No, there isn't. We know that there are still issues with the cash rate in Australia. Although there may be some relief in the coming months, inflation is still up. People are still paying enormous amounts of mortgage rates for their house, for their homes, and people are still doing it tough, as we know, with the prices of produce and retail prices. Where is the relief coming from Albanese? Well, it isn't. Ultimately, he's making decisions on the run based entirely on polling on that day. It's a hell of a decision to change and to renege on a promise that you made during an election period literally overnight. But he did do it, and he's getting away with it because the media will slowly turn away and not bother about this issue. And we don't know what the other parties will do. What will the coalition do? They may ultimately just agree with the tax cuts. And there lies the problem. Will the public ultimately remember what he's done? I hope they do. They need to remember that any promise made by Albanese and the Labor government isn't worth the paper it's on.
I think that's very well said, Tanya. I mean, and the thing about the cash rate also is that, as you mentioned, there looks like there might be some relief in the coming months. The banks are predicting that the RBA will lower the cash rate, but as we both know, that doesn't mean that the banks are actually going to pass on the lowered cash rate to mortgage holders. They can just either hold the interest rates the same or lower them only slightly. I mean, there's nothing stopping them from doing that, and they've done it in the past. So this piddly decision by Albo just it makes my blood boil, honestly. Really, it does. Now, Tanya, on to something that's a little bit more fun. I understand you are speaking at the Reckless Renewables rally on Tuesday outside Parliament House, among many other great speakers. Could you tell us what that event involves? What's it all about?
Yeah, look, I'm really looking forward to it. I haven't actually been to Canberra for many, many years. This is a rally that's been organised chiefly by people living in regional parts of New South Wales who have really had a gutful of the renewables that are being fast-tracked and pushed into regions, often at the expense of local business communities and indeed residents. There are on foot a number of renewable projects, offshore and indeed onshore wind farms, that are really contentious and are causing a great deal of concern, including the Port Stephens offshore wind farm that's being proposed and the Illawarra offshore wind farm. The residents are concerned. This is a rally where people are coming from different parts of New South Wales to get together in the heart of democracy in front of Australian Parliament, and they want to send a really strong message that why should Australians have to endure high energy costs, destruction of their local community, their local environment, the businesses that rely heavily on tourism and on water-related industries as well, when you're seeing particularly with Port Stephens that rely heavily on their fishing industry. These renewable projects will destroy much of what the communities are so used to. And they're being done and being fast-tracked by both federal and New South Wales Labor without any real consultation or discussion with locals or indeed with local businesses. And we know that it won't actually reduce energy costs. We know that these unreasonable net zero targets that have been pushed through in Australia and indeed in New South Wales. In fact, in New South Wales, I should mention, Daisy, we have the worst and most draconian net zero targets in the country that were passed in the late hours at the end of parliamentary session in November, where we now have, not only do we have the 2030 50% target, we've also got a 70% 2035 target, which is completely unreasonable. It'll mean that most of the power stations, if not all of the remaining power stations, will be forced to shut, and they will fast-track these renewable projects that are very costly, untested, and being really opposed by the local communities, and rightly so. So this is a rally where we're trying to get attention to the federal media, try to get the attention across to all the different major political parties, and there will be speakers from everyone but Labor and the Greens. So that's surprise, surprise, but hopefully they will hear the rally, because I expect there will be thousands of people. I know there are buses being coordinated from different parts of New South Wales and indeed other parts of the country as well. People are going down in droves. They want to get the message across that it should be about people and not about this sort of mad net zero target that we know isn't in the interests of Australia whatsoever.